Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the exploration ship Terra's Hope and watched the stars through the main screen. The ship floated quietly at the edge of known space, far from Earth and the busy trade routes that connected human colonies to alien worlds. Jake had been out here for 3 months, mapping new star systems and looking for planets that might support life. The communication console beeped with an urgent message. Lieutenant Amy Parker, his communications officer, turned to face him with a worried expression on her face. "Captain, we're getting a priority transmission from Earth Command. It's marked as Emergency Level 1. Jake felt his stomach tighten. Emergency Level 1 meant something very serious had happened. "Put it through to my ready room, Lieutenant, and ask Dr. Chun to meet me there." Jake walked quickly to his small office behind the bridge. The walls were covered with star charts and photos of alien species that humans had encountered over the past 2 centuries. Since 2187, when humans first made contact with the Galactic Council, these relationships had been the foundation of human expansion into space. Dr. Lisa Chun arrived just as the transmission began. She was the ship's head of alien biology and one of the smartest people Jake had ever met. Her specialty was understanding how different alien species thought and acted. Lisa had spent years working with the Council, helping humans and aliens understand each other better. The face of Admiral Robert Stone appeared on Jake's screen. The old man looked tired and angry. His usually neat uniform was wrinkled, and his gray hair was messy. Jake had never seen his superior officer look so defeated. "Captain Morrison, what?" "I'm about to tell you will change everything for humanity," Admiral Stone began. His voice was heavy with emotion. 3 hours ago, the Galactic Council voted to expel all humans from galactic civilization. The vote was unanimous among the alien species. We are no longer welcome in Council space. Lisa gasped and covered her mouth with her hands. Jake felt like someone had hit him in the chest. This couldn't be happening. Humans had been part of the Council for 200 years. They had helped build trade networks, shared technology, and fought alongside alien allies in several wars. Admiral Stone continued reading from an official document. The Council states that humans are too aggressive, too unpredictable, and too dangerous to remain part of civilized galactic society. All human colonies outside the Sol system must be abandoned within 6 months. All trade agreements are immediately terminated. All diplomatic channels are permanently closed. Jake found his voice. "Sir, what about our allies? What about the Zentari trade agreements? The Mordani agricultural programs? We've worked together for generations." The Admiral's expression grew even darker. The Zentari Prime Minister Vexthal was the one who proposed our expulsion. He said humans were a virus that needed to be removed before we infected the rest of the galaxy with our violence. The Mordani Chancellor Krieg seconded the motion. Our closest allies voted against us without hesitation. Lisa stood up quickly, her face red with anger. "This is insane. Humans have contributed more to galactic civilization than any other species. Our medical research has saved billions of alien lives. Our engineering has built half the space stations in Council territory. Our diplomats have prevented dozens of wars." "None of that matters now," Admiral Stone replied. "The Council has made their decision. They believe the galaxy will be better off without us." Jake looked at the star charts on his walls. Each one represented years of human exploration and discovery. Human ships had found most of the habitable worlds that alien species now called home. Human scientists had solved agricultural problems that had plagued alien civilizations for centuries. Human peacekeepers had maintained order in the most dangerous sectors of space. "What about the colonies?" Jake asked. "We have over 50 worlds outside the Sol system. Millions of people call those places home." Admiral Stone nodded grimly. "Everyone must return to Earth or the inner colonies within 6 months. The Council has given us that long to evacuate completely. After that, any human found in their space will be arrested or worse." Lisa shook her head in disbelief. "The Mordani agricultural colonies will fail without human expertise. Their soil management systems are completely dependent on our techniques. The Xanthari Defense Fleet uses human-designed maintenance protocols. Without our support, their ships will break down within years. I tried to explain that to the Council, Admiral Stone said. They believe they can manage without us. Prime Minister Vexthal actually laughed when I mentioned the agricultural systems. He said aliens had been growing food long before humans left their home planet. Jake felt a cold anger building in his chest. These aliens had used human knowledge and hard work to build their civilizations, and now they were throwing humans away like garbage. What are our orders, Admiral? You are to return to the inner colonies immediately and begin evacuation operations. The Terra's Hope and 12 other exploration ships have been tasked with collecting human personnel from the outer settlements. We have to move fast. The Council has already begun sending their own ships to monitor human activities. Dr. Chun sat down heavily in her chair. This will destroy both sides. Humans and aliens have become so connected that separation will hurt everyone. The economic disruption alone will cause massive problems. Admiral Stone looked directly at her through the screen. Dr. Chun, I need you to document everything. Every technology we shared, every problem we solved, every system we designed. Future generations need to understand what we built together and what the aliens chose to throw away. Jake stood at attention. We'll begin evacuation operations immediately, sir. How long do we have for the entire operation? 6 months for complete withdrawal. The transport ships are already being organized, but it's going to be the largest movement of people in human history. Some families have lived on those outer worlds for 5 generations. They've never even seen Earth. The transmission continued for another hour as Admiral Stone explained the details of the evacuation plan. Each human ship would be assigned specific colonies to empty. The Terra's Hope would handle 7 settlements. In the Kepler sector, including the research station on New Harmony where 300 scientists studied alien plant life. When the transmission ended, Jake and Lisa sat in silence for several minutes. The ship suddenly felt very small and lonely, floating in the darkness between stars that no longer welcomed human visitors. Captain, Lisa finally said, I think this is the biggest mistake in galactic history. The aliens are acting on fear and prejudice, not logic. They'll regret this decision, but by then it might be too late to fix the damage. Jake nodded slowly. Maybe you're right, Doctor. But right now, our job is to get our people home safely. We can worry about alien regrets later. Over the next few weeks, Jake watched as centuries of diplomatic progress crumbled. Human ambassadors were escorted out of alien capitals. Trade ships were turned away from ports where they had been welcome for generations. Scientists working on joint research projects were ordered to leave immediately. Taking nothing with them, the Terra's Hope moved from colony to colony, loading desperate families and their few possessions. Each world told the same story, alien. Officials arrived with enforcement ships and gave humans days or hours to pack up entire lives. Generations of work and community building were abandoned on New Harmony. Jake met Dr. Ben Santos, who had spent 30 years developing new crops that could grow in alien soil. The man was 70 years old and had planned to die on this world he had helped create. Now he stood in the ship's cargo bay, holding a single bag of seeds that represented his life's work. They wouldn't even let me finish the growing season, Dr. Santos told Jake. 20 years of research will die in those fields because they couldn't wait 3 more months. As the Terra's Hope left each abandoned colony, Jake looked back at the empty buildings and unused equipment that humans were forced to leave behind. The aliens had gained advanced facilities and technology for free, while humans lost homes and dreams. The journey back to Earth took 2 months. During that time, Jake received regular reports about the evacuation progress. Some alien species were already having problems without human support, but their governments refused to change their decision. Pride was more important than practical concerns. When Earth finally appeared on the main screen, Jake felt a mix of relief and sadness. Humanity was going home, but they were returning as refugees from the stars they had helped civilize. 50 years had passed since the Great Severance, and Earth looked nothing like the world that aliens had rejected. Commander Alex Turner stood in the observation deck of the new orbital defense platform and watched construction crews finish. the last sections of humanity's most advanced space station. The sight filled him with pride and a touch of sadness for what could have been. Alex was only 5 years old when the aliens expelled humanity from galactic civilization. He grew up hearing stories about the time when humans and aliens worked together among the stars. Now, at 55, he commanded the Terran Defense Force, the most powerful military organization in human history. "Commander Turner, President Williams is ready for the briefing," announced Lieutenant Carol Davis, his aide. Carol was part of the new generation that had never known alien contact. To her, humans had always been alone in the universe, and that seemed perfectly normal. Alex walked through the gleaming corridors of the defense platform toward the conference room. The walls were lined with displays showing real-time information from across human space. Manufacturing output, population growth, technological development, military readiness, every number told the same story. Humanity was thriving like never before. President Katie Williams was already seated at the conference table when Alex arrived. She was the third president since the severance and probably the most successful. Under her leadership, humanity had not just survived their isolation, they had flourished beyond anyone's wildest dreams. "Good morning, Alex," President Williams said with a warm smile. "I trust our friends in the galaxy are still keeping to themselves?" Alex nodded as he took his seat. For 50 years, humans had maintained a strict policy of non-contact with alien civilizations, no trade, no communication, no interference. The galaxy had made their choice, and humanity respected it completely. "Our long-range sensors show increased military activity in the former Xanthari Empire," Alex reported. 3 border wars in the past year, and their fleet strength is down 40% from pre-severance levels. The Mordani Collective is having similar problems with internal conflicts. Dr. Maya Singh, the head of Human Scientific Development, joined the conversation from her seat across the table. She was considered the smartest person on Earth, responsible for breakthrough discoveries that had revolutionized human technology. "The reports from our deep space observation posts confirm what we expected. Without human innovation and problem-solving skills, alien civilizations are stagnating." President Williams looked thoughtful. "Remind me again why we care about their problems, Doctor?" Maya smiled slightly. "We don't care about their problems, Madam President. We care about understanding the consequences of their decision. It validates everything we've accomplished since they forced us to become self-reliant." Alex pulled up a holographic display showing human space. Earth sat at the center, surrounded by dozens of thriving colonies and industrial worlds. Massive space stations served as manufacturing centers, research facilities, and military bases. The entire system hummed with activity and purpose. 50 years ago, we had technology roughly equal to the galactic average," Alex explained. "Today, our worst starship could outrun and outfight anything in alien space. Our manufacturing capacity exceeds what the entire Galactic Council produced at their peak." Chief Engineer Pete Rodriguez entered the room carrying a datapad full of the latest production reports. Pete was a legend among human engineers, the man who had designed the revolutionary propulsion systems that made human ships the fastest in the galaxy. Not that the galaxy knew this, since humans kept their capabilities strictly secret. "The new shipyards at Jupiter completed another production run this week," Pete announced proudly. 47 heavy cruisers, each one more advanced than the alien dreadnoughts that used to patrol Council space. "We're building ships faster than we can train crews to operate them." President Williams leaned back in her chair. "Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if the aliens had been more patient with us. If they had tried to work through their concerns instead of simply throwing us out." Dr. Singh laughed softly. "They would have held us back, Madam President. Human innovation works best when we're free to experiment and take risks. The aliens were always too cautious, too worried about following their ancient traditions. They would have limited our potential." Alex remembered the stories his father had told him about working with alien engineers. Every new idea had to be approved by committees that took months to make decisions. Every innovation had to be tested for years before implementation. Human creativity had been constantly frustrated by alien bureaucracy and fear of change. Our intelligence networks report that the Zentari are still using maintenance protocols that humans designed over 60 years ago, Alex said. Their newest ships are based on designs that we considered outdated before the severance. They've made almost no technological progress in 5 decades, Pete nodded enthusiastically. Their ships are literally falling apart, without human mechanics. And engineers, they can't maintain their own technology. Meanwhile, we've developed systems they couldn't even understand if we gave them the blueprints. The conversation was interrupted by Admiral Kate Foster, Alex's second-in-command and the person responsible for humanity's stellar navy. Kate was a brilliant strategist who had planned the defense of human space down to the smallest detail. She had also overseen the secret exploration missions that kept humans informed about galactic affairs. Madam President, I have the latest. Reports from our stealth reconnaissance ships, Kate announced as she took her seat. The situation in alien space is worse than we thought. The Mordani agricultural colonies are experiencing massive crop failures. Their population is starting to decline for the first time in centuries. President Williams frowned with concern. Despite everything the aliens had done, she still felt sympathy for their suffering. How bad is it, Admiral? Kate consulted her datapad. At least 12 worlds are facing serious food shortages. The Mordani tried to implement new farming techniques, but they lacked the expertise to make them work. Their crop yields have dropped 30% in the past decade. Dr. Singh shook her head sadly. Human agricultural specialists designed those farming systems specifically for alien soil conditions. Without ongoing human support and adaptation, failure was inevitable. We tried to warn them 50 years ago. Alex pulled up another display showing military activities across known space. The problems go beyond agriculture. Pirate attacks are up 400% since the severance. The Council's peacekeeping fleet has been reduced to less than 20% of its former strength. Entire trade routes have been abandoned because they're too dangerous to patrol. Pete laughed bitterly. They blamed humans for being too aggressive, and now they can't maintain basic security without us. The irony is almost funny. President Williams stood up and walked to the large window that looked out at Earth. The planet was more beautiful than ever, with clear skies and thriving cities. The population had grown to 12 billion people, all living in comfort and prosperity that previous generations could never have imagined. What about our own expansion plans? She asked without turning around. Admiral Foster activated a new holographic display showing unexplored space beyond human territory. Our deep space exploration ships have identified over 300 potentially habitable worlds. We could begin colonization operations whenever you give the order, Madam President. Alex studied the star map with professional interest. Our new colony ships can transport 1 million people each, and we can terraform most worlds in less than 10 years. If we wanted to match the old Galactic Council's territory, we could do it in a single generation. Dr. Singh added her own perspective. The difference is that our expansion would be sustainable. We've learned from the aliens' mistakes. Our colonies are designed to be self-sufficient from the beginning, not dependent on constant support from the home world. President Williams turned back to face the group. And if the aliens detect our expansion? What if they see it as a threat? Kate smiled confidently. Let them try to stop us, Madam President. Our ships are faster, our weapons are more powerful, and our tactics are more flexible. Any alien force that challenges human expansion would be making a serious mistake. The meeting continued for another hour as they discussed various aspects of human development. Population growth, technological advancement, military readiness, economic expansion. Every topic demonstrated the same truth. Humanity had not just survived their rejection by the galaxy. They had thrived in ways that would have been impossible under alien oversight. As the meeting ended, Alex remained behind to speak privately with President Williams. Madam President, do you ever think about making contact again? Not for our benefit, but for theirs? President Williams considered the question carefully. Sometimes, Alex, but they made their choice 50 years ago. They decided they didn't want or need human involvement in their affairs. Who are we to override that decision now? Alex nodded slowly. Even if they're destroying themselves through their own stubbornness? Even then, President Williams replied firmly, we respect their right to make their own mistakes, just as we demanded the right to make ours. Senator Carl Murphy sat in his small office on Earth and stared at the communication device on his desk. For the first time in 75 years, an alien was trying to contact him directly. Carl had been humanity's last ambassador to the galactic council before the Great Severance. Now, at 93 years old, he was one of the few humans who remembered what galactic cooperation used to look like. The device beeped again with an incoming message. Carl knew he should report this contact to President Thompson immediately, but curiosity made him hesitate. What could the aliens possibly want after all this time? He pressed the accept button and watched as a Xanthari face appeared on his screen. The alien looked terrible. Kethmer had been a junior diplomat when Carl knew him decades ago. Now his blue skin was pale and sickly, his once proud head crest was wilted, and his large eyes showed deep exhaustion. This was not the confident Xanthari that Carl remembered from the old days. Senator Murphy, Kethmer said in heavily accented English, I apologize for contacting you in secret, but my government would execute me if they knew I was speaking to a human. We need your help desperately. Carl leaned back in his chair and studied the alien's face. Help with what, old friend? People made it very clear that you didn't want anything to do with humans. That was 75 years ago, and we've respected your wishes completely. Kethmar's head dropped in shame. We were wrong, Senator. Terribly, catastrophically wrong. The galaxy is falling apart and we don't know how to fix it. Our agricultural worlds are dying. Our children are starving. Please, we need the farming techniques that humans developed for our soil types. I'm sorry, Kethmer, but Earth's policy is very clear, Carl replied firmly. We don't interfere in galactic affairs. Your people chose independence from human influence, and we respect that choice. You'll have to solve your problems yourselves. The Xanthari diplomat began to cry, which was something Carl had never seen before. Xanthari were proud people who rarely showed emotion to outsiders. Senator, entire worlds are going hungry. Billions of people may die if we can't restore food production. Surely humanity wouldn't let that happen out of spite? Carl felt a pang of sympathy, but he also remembered the insults and accusations that Xanthari leaders had made about humans during the expulsion hearings. This isn't about spite, Kethmer. This is about respecting the decision your people made. You said you could manage without human help. You said you would be better off without us. The transmission ended abruptly as Kethmer cut the connection, probably afraid of being detected by his own government security systems. Carl sat in silence for several minutes, thinking about what he had just heard. Then he made the call he was required to make under Earth's strict protocols. On the frontier world of New Eden, Colonel Ryan Beck was having his own encounter with galactic decay. His monitoring station intercepted alien communications from across known space, and the reports grew more desperate every day. Ryan had served at this remote outpost for 15 years, watching the galaxy slowly collapse from a safe distance. Colonel, you need to hear this transmission, called Sergeant Kelly Brooks from her communications console. Kelly was a young woman who had never seen an alien in person, but she had become an expert at interpreting their desperate messages. Ryan walked over to listen as Kelly played back an intercepted Mordani military communication. The alien commander was reporting massive pirate attacks on 3 different trade convoys. His fleet was too small and too old to provide adequate protection, and he was requesting emergency assistance from the central government. That's the 4th convoy attack this week, Kelly observed. The pirates are getting bolder because they know the Mordani can't stop them, Ryan nodded grimly. Without human peacekeeping forces, the shipping lanes have become a nightmare. Pirates used to avoid Mordani space because they knew human patrol ships would hunt them down. Now it's open season. Another transmission came through, this one from a Xanthari colony requesting emergency medical supplies. Their local hospitals were overwhelmed with cases of a disease that human doctors had eliminated decades ago. Without human medical knowledge, the disease was spreading again and killing thousands of aliens. Kelly shook her head sadly. I don't understand why they threw out the humans if they needed them so badly. Were the alien leaders really that stupid? Ryan remembered the stories his grandfather had told him about working with aliens before the severance. It wasn't stupidity, Sergeant, it was pride and fear. The aliens were afraid that humans were becoming too important to their civilization. They thought they could maintain everything humans had built without actually needing humans around. A new alarm sounded, indicating that the station had detected a major space battle. Ryan and Kelly watched their screens as sensor data showed Xanthari and Mordani fleets fighting each other near a disputed border world. Ships were exploding on both sides, and the battle was spreading to include civilian vessels trying to evacuate the planet. Border disputes used to be settled through human mediation, Ryan explained to Kelly. Human diplomats were good at finding solutions that both sides could accept. Without that mediation, every disagreement becomes a shooting war. At the Terran Strategic Institute on Earth, Dr. Nina Foster was compiling reports about galactic conditions for the government's monthly briefing. Nina was Admiral Kate Foster's sister and one of humanity's leading experts on alien civilizations. Her job was to analyze the intercepted communications and provide intelligence about galactic affairs. The reports painted a picture of complete civilizational breakdown. The Galactic Council had not met in over 10 years because member species could no longer agree on anything. Trade between alien worlds had dropped to less than 20% of pre-severance levels. Entire star systems had gone dark, their populations either dead or evacuated to more stable regions. The pattern is always the same, Nanya dictated to her computer as she prepared her analysis. Problems arise that require creative solutions and adaptive thinking. The aliens try to solve them using rigid, traditional methods that don't work. The problems get worse, leading to conflict and social breakdown. Nina pulled up a specific case study about the former human colony of New Harmony. After humans were forced to abandon the world, the Mordani had taken it over and tried to continue the agricultural research that Dr. Ben Santos had started. Without human expertise, the experiments had failed catastrophically, poisoning the soil and making the entire planet uninhabitable. Human flexibility and innovation weren't luxuries. Nina continued her report. They were essential components of galactic civilization. The aliens became dependent on human problem-solving abilities without realizing it. When they expelled humans, they lost the very thing that held their society together. A message arrived from her brother Alex, now a full admiral commanding humanity's deep space reconnaissance fleet. His ships operated in total secrecy, using advanced stealth technology to observe galactic affairs without being detected. The information they provided was invaluable for understanding how badly alien civilization was deteriorating. Nina, the latest intelligence reports are beyond anything we've seen before, Alex's message began. Entire sectors of space are now controlled by pirates and warlords. The Xanthari Empire has lost control of over 40% of its territory. The Mordani Collective is breaking apart as individual worlds declare independence rather than share resources with their neighbors. Nina read through Alex's detailed reports with growing amazement. The aliens weren't just having problems, their entire way of life was collapsing. Population centers that had existed for thousands of years were being abandoned. Ancient trade routes that had connected civilizations for millennia were no longer safe to travel. The most disturbing part, Alex's message continued, is that many of these problems have simple solutions. Pirates could be eliminated with proper patrol tactics. Agricultural failures could be prevented with adaptive farming techniques. Diplomatic crises could be resolved with flexible negotiation strategies. But the aliens seem incapable of implementing any of these solutions. Nina understood what her brother meant. Humans had always excelled at adapting to new situations and finding creative solutions to unexpected problems. Aliens, on the other hand, preferred to follow established procedures and traditional methods. When those methods failed, they had no backup plan. Dr. Ben Turner, Alex's brother and head of human scientific research, visited Nina's office to discuss the latest technological reports from alien space. Ben's teams monitored alien scientific publications and technological developments, looking for signs of progress or innovation. They've made almost no meaningful advances in 75 years, Ben reported sadly. Their newest spacecraft designs are based on human blueprints from before the severance. Their medical research has stagnated completely. Even their basic manufacturing processes are becoming less efficient over time. Nina pulled up comparative charts showing human versus alien technological development since the severance. The lines on the graph told a dramatic story. Human technology had advanced exponentially, while alien technology had actually regressed in many areas. President Lucy Thompson stood at the window of her office and watched the morning sun rise over Earth's capital city. At 45 years old, she was the youngest president in Earth's history, and today she faced the most important decision any human leader had ever confronted. On her desk lay an official communication that had arrived just 12 hours ago. The first formal message from alien governments in nearly a century. The door chimed, and her chief advisor entered the room. Ambassador Steve Collins was a tall, serious man who had spent his entire career studying alien cultures that most humans had never seen. His grandfather had been one of the last human diplomats to work with the Galactic Council before the Great Severance. Madam President, the alien delegation has arrived at the neutral station, Steve reported. They're requesting permission to meet with you immediately. The situation in their space must be even worse than our intelligence reports suggested. President Thompson turned away from the window and walked to her desk. The alien message was written in perfect English, which was surprising since most aliens had refused to use human languages for decades. The formal document was signed by representatives from every major species in the galaxy, including some that humans had never heard of before. "Read me the key points again, Steve," she requested as she sat down. Steve activated his datapad and began reading. The message states that the Galactic Council formally requests an emergency meeting with Earth's government to discuss matters of mutual survival. They acknowledge that previous decisions may have been made in error, and they are prepared to offer substantial concessions in exchange for human assistance. The president laughed bitterly. Substantial concessions? 75 years ago, they treated us like criminals and threw us out of civilized space. Now they want to negotiate? Steve nodded sympathetically. The intelligence reports from Admiral Turner's reconnaissance ships confirm that galactic civilization is on the verge of complete collapse. Food shortages, military conflicts, technological failures, economic breakdown, everything is falling apart at once. President Thompson had read those reports carefully. Entire star systems were being abandoned as their populations fled to more stable regions. Pirate fleets controlled major trade routes because alien governments lacked the military strength to protect shipping. Diseases that human medicine had eliminated centuries ago were spreading again across alien worlds. What does General Parker think about this? The president asked. General Amy Parker was Earth's top military strategist and one of the few people whose opinion President Thompson trusted completely. Amy had spent her career planning for every possible scenario involving alien contact, including the possibility that desperate aliens might try to take by force what they couldn't get through. Negotiation. General Parker believes this is a trap, Steve replied honestly. She thinks the aliens might be planning to blame humans for their problems and use that as justification for an attack on Earth. Her recommendation is to refuse the meeting and increase our defensive preparations. President Thompson considered this possibility. Human technology was far superior to anything the aliens possessed, but desperate people sometimes made irrational decisions. If alien leaders decided that war was preferable to admitting their mistakes, they might launch a suicidal attack on human space. What about Dr. Turner's assessment? she asked. Chief Scientist Dr. Ben Turner had analyzed the alien message from a purely technical perspective. Ben was widely considered the smartest human alive, and his scientific insights had contributed to many of humanity's greatest technological advances over the past decades. Dr. Turner believes the aliens are genuine in their desperation, Steve answered. His analysis of their communication patterns and the specific concessions they're offering suggests this isn't a deception. They really are facing extinction-level problems. The president walked to a wall display that showed the current state of human civilization. Earth and its colonies were more prosperous than ever, with a total population approaching 20 billion, people living in comfort and security. Human technology continued to advance at an incredible pace, and their military forces were the most powerful in galactic history. Schedule the meeting, President Thompson decided. But we do this on our terms. The alien delegation comes to the abandoned council station at Nexus Prime. They get 1 day to make their case. And then we leave. No extended negotiations, no pressure tactics. Steve looked surprised by her decision. Madame President, are you sure about this? The political risks are enormous. If the public finds out we're talking to aliens again, there could be serious backlash. President Thompson smiled grimly. Steve, I didn't become president to make safe choices. Besides, I'm curious to see what the people who once called us too dangerous for civilized society are willing to offer now. 3 days later, Ambassador Steve Collins stood in the docking bay of the massive space station at Nexus Prime. The station had been abandoned for over 30 years, its corridors empty and many of its systems failing. It was a perfect symbol of what galactic civilization had become without human involvement. The alien shuttle that arrived was old and poorly maintained, nothing like the sleek vessels that had once represented galactic power and sophistication. As the alien delegation disembarked, Steve was shocked by their appearance. These weren't the proud, confident leaders he had studied in historical records. They looked defeated and desperate. Prime Minister Vexthal of the Xanthari Empire was the same alien who had proposed humanity's expulsion 75 years ago. Now he was ancient and frail, his once magnificent ceremonial robes faded and patched. Behind him walked Chancellor Krieg of the Mordani Collective, the alien who had seconded the motion to expel humans. Krieg's species was known for their perfect posture, but now he walked with a pronounced stoop that suggested malnutrition. Ambassador Collins, Vexthal said in a weak voice, thank you for agreeing to this meeting. We know we have no right to ask for your time after what we did to your people. Steve led the alien delegation through the empty corridors of Nexus Prime toward the old council chambers. Their footsteps echoed in the silence, and several times they had to detour around sections where the life support systems had failed completely. This station used to be the pride of galactic civilization, Chancellor Krieg observed sadly. Now look at it. We can't even maintain our own greatest achievements. The council chambers were a shadow of their former glory. Most of the seats were empty, representing species that had either gone extinct or retreated to their home worlds. The great holographic displays that once showed the wealth and power of galactic civilization were dark and broken. Steve took his place at the table where human ambassadors had once sat as equals. You have 1 day to explain what you want from humanity and what you're offering in return. I suggest you use that time wisely. Vexthal stood slowly and activated a small portable display device. The images it showed were horrifying. Starving alien children, abandoned cities, ships floating dead in space, entire worlds reverting to pre-industrial conditions. Ambassador Collins, this is what our galaxy has become, Vexthal began. When we expelled humanity, we thought we were protecting our civilization from human aggression and unpredictability. Instead, we destroyed the very foundation that held our society together. Chancellor Krieg added his own perspective. We didn't understand how dependent we had become on human innovation and problem-solving abilities. When crises arose, we kept expecting humans to step forward with solutions. But you weren't there anymore because we had thrown you out. Steve watched the images without showing emotion. though privately he felt sympathy for the suffering aliens. "What specifically do you want from humanity?" Vexthel's voice became even weaker. "Everything. We need human agricultural experts to restore food production on our worlds. We need human engineers to repair our failing infrastructure. We need human doctors to combat diseases we can no longer treat. We need human peacekeepers to restore order to our trade routes." "In other words," Steve said coldly, "you want humans to solve all the problems you created by rejecting human help in the first place." Chancellor Krieg nodded shamefully. "Yes, we understand how this looks. We're asking the people we insulted and expelled to save us from our own stupidity. But millions of innocent beings are suffering because of decisions their leaders made decades ago." Steve pulled out his own datapad and began reading from it. "Let me tell you what humanity has accomplished since you expelled us. Our population has grown from 8 billion to 20 billion people. Our technology has advanced beyond anything you could comprehend. Our military could conquer this entire galaxy in less than a year if we chose to do so." The alien leaders looked even more defeated as they heard these numbers. They had expected humans to struggle without alien technology and trade. Instead, humans had thrived beyond their wildest imagination. "What are you offering in exchange for this help?" Steve asked. Vextel gestured weakly at a data crystal he placed on the table. "Full readmission to the Galactic Council with expanded voting rights. Exclusive trade agreements that would give humanity access to resources across the galaxy." The debate had been raging for 3 weeks across every human world and colony. President Lucy Thompson sat in the Global Council chambers on Earth, listening to the final arguments from representatives of 20 billion human beings. The decision she would make today would shape the future of the galaxy, and the weight of that responsibility was almost crushing. Senator Helen Martinez stood at the speaker's podium, her voice filled with anger and conviction. Helen represented the Mars colonies, where many families still remembered the humiliation of being expelled from galactic civilization. Her position was clear and uncompromising. "We owe these aliens nothing," Helen declared to the packed chamber. 75 years ago, they called us violent, unpredictable, and dangerous. They threw us out of our own colonies and forced millions of humans to abandon homes they had built over generations. Now they come crawling back, begging for help, only because their own incompetence has destroyed their civilization. The chamber erupted in applause from nearly half the representatives. Many humans had never forgiven the aliens for the great severance, and they saw no reason to help those who had treated humanity so cruelly. Helen continued her speech with growing passion. "They made their choice when they decided they were better off without us. Let them live with the consequences. Humanity has built something beautiful and powerful without their help. Why should we risk our people's lives and resources to save civilizations that rejected us?" When Helen finished speaking, the chamber fell silent as Dr. Rachel Foster approached the podium. Rachel was the older sister of Admiral Kate Foster and Dr. Nina Foster, and she was widely respected as one of humanity's greatest philosophers and ethical thinkers. Her words would carry enormous weight with the assembled representatives. "I understand Senator Martinez's anger," Rachel began quietly. "We all remember the pain and humiliation of the severance. But we must ask ourselves, what kind of people we want to be? Do we want to be the species that turns its back on suffering because of old grievances? Or do we want to be the species that rises above past wrongs to do what is right?" Rachel activated a holographic display showing images from the alien delegations. Presentation: starving children, collapsing cities, dying worlds. The suffering was real and heartbreaking regardless of who was responsible for causing it. "The question isn't whether the aliens deserve our help," Rachel continued. "The question is whether we deserve to call ourselves civilized if we let billions of innocent beings die because their leaders made terrible decisions decades ago. Many of the aliens who are suffering today weren't even born when humanity was." Expelled from the council. Admiral Jake Morrison, now one of humanity's most respected voices, stood to address the chamber. Jake had been present at the original severance as a young captain, and his opinion would influence many undecided representatives. I've spent my entire career serving humanity among the stars, Jake said in his calm, measured voice. I was there when we were forced to abandon our colonies. I led evacuation fleets filled with families who had lost everything because of alien prejudice. I have every reason to hate them for what they did to us. The chamber was completely silent as Jake paused to gather his thoughts. But I've also seen what humanity can accomplish when we're at our best. We don't help others because they deserve it. We help others because that's who we are. If we let alien civilizations collapse out of spite, we become the very thing they accused us of being: violent, cruel, and dangerous. Jake's words seemed to shift the mood in the chamber. Even some of Senator Martinez's strongest supporters looked thoughtful and uncertain. President Thompson called for a recess before the final vote. As representatives filed out to discuss the decision with their constituents, she met privately with her closest advisors in a secure conference room. The people in this room would help her understand the full implications of whatever choice humanity made. General Amy Parker sat across from the president, her expression serious and professional. Madam President, if we decide to help the aliens, we need to be very careful about how we do it. Our military analysis suggests that some alien factions might try to use human aid as an opportunity to attack us or steal our technology. Captain Tony Williams, President Thompson's son and commander of humanity's flagship New Dawn, nodded in agreement. Our intelligence reports show that not all aliens support asking for human help. Some groups see it as a humiliation that must be avenged. We could be walking into a trap. Dr. Ben Turner, head of human scientific research, offered a different perspective. The aliens' technological base has deteriorated so badly that they couldn't threaten us even if they tried. Our worst starships could defeat their best fleets without serious difficulty. The real risk isn't military, it's political. President Thompson looked at each of her advisors carefully. Explain the political risks, Doctor. Ben pulled up a complex chart showing human public opinion across all colonies and worlds. The human population is split almost evenly on this issue. If we help the aliens and something goes wrong, if there are human casualties, or if the aliens betray us again, the political backlash could destroy your administration and damage human unity for generations. Admiral Kate Foster, who had commanded humanity's stellar navy for decades, offered her own analysis. On the other hand, if we refuse to help and billions of aliens die, future generations might judge us harshly. History could remember us as the species that chose revenge over mercy when we had the power to save lives. President Thompson stood and walked to the large window that showed Earth's beautiful blue sky. Somewhere out there among the stars, entire civilizations were slowly dying while humanity debated whether to save them. The irony wasn't lost on her. The species that aliens had called too dangerous were now the only hope for galactic survival. What would be your recommendation, Admiral Morrison? She asked. Jake had been quiet during most of the discussion, but now he spoke with the wisdom of someone who had lived through humanity's greatest crisis and triumph. Madam President, I think. We help them, but we do it on our terms. We don't just give them aid, we reshape their entire approach to civilization. President Thompson turned back to face the group. What do you mean? Jake stood and activated a holographic display showing his proposed plan. We dissolved the old Galactic Council completely. It was a failed system based on species hierarchy and rigid thinking. Instead, we create a new federation based on human principles: merit, adaptability, cooperation, and individual rights rather than group identity. General Parker looked intrigued despite her earlier concerns. A complete restructuring of galactic civilization. That's ambitious, Admiral. How would we enforce such a system? Jake smiled confidently. We don't enforce it through military power. We enforce it through competence. Every world that wants human aid has to adopt human-style governance and social systems. They have to prove they can work together and solve problems cooperatively before they get access to our technology and expertise. Dr. Turner nodded enthusiastically. That could work. We use our superior capabilities as leverage to create a better form of galactic civilization. The aliens get the help they need, but only if they abandon the rigid thinking that caused these problems in the first place. President Thompson felt a sense of clarity settling over her mind. This approach felt right. It was neither pure mercy nor pure revenge, but something more sophisticated. Humanity would help the galaxy, but they would also ensure that the mistakes of the past couldn't be repeated. 2 hours later, President Thompson returned to the Global Council chambers to announce her decision. The representatives fell silent. As she approached the podium, knowing that her words would determine the fate of trillions of beings across the galaxy. My fellow humans, she began, 75 years ago, alien civilizations rejected us because they feared our influence on their way of life. Today, we have the opportunity to prove that their fears were misplaced and their rejection was their loss, not ours. The chamber remained silent as President Thompson outlined her plan. We will help the galaxy, but we will not restore the old system that led to this crisis. Instead, we will build something new, a Terran Federation based on human values of cooperation, innovation, and individual merit. She paused to let her words sink in before continuing. Any world that wants human assistance must adopt our governmental and social principles. They must prove they can work together across species lines and abandon the rigid hierarchies that caused galactic civilization to stagnate. This isn't about human dominance, it's about creating a system that actually works. The vote was closer than expected, but humanity chose mercy over revenge by a margin of 55%. Within weeks, the first human-aid ships began departing for alien space, carrying agricultural specialists, medical teams, and engineers who would begin the massive task of rebuilding galactic civilization. Captain Tony Williams stood on the bridge of the new dawn as it led the first human fleet back into galactic space in nearly a century. The sight of human ships appearing in failing alien systems brought hope to desperate populations and fear to leaders who remembered the old prejudices on the agricultural world of Kepler 7, Dr.